All right, guys. So Jon Stewart did a segment on immigration. Of course, this has been a big issue recently, and the Democrats and the Republicans came up with a bipartisan bill to really crack down on immigration. It was a very right-wing bill on this issue. And so he's going to do a segment here where he goes after basically the anti-immigration fearmongers and also exposes the hypocrisy of many of the people involved in this debate. Let's watch.
We now return you to your regularly scheduled presidential election year programming.
Fox News learned America's border crisis boiling over.
Chaos at the border.
The never-ending surge of migrants crashing across our southern border.
Yes, every 2 to 4 years, we are reminded that we have a southern border. And it is porous.
There's a migrant crime spree killing Americans, and the president's an accessory to murder.
We are being overwhelmed. There is no word to describe this except invasion.
Illegal invaders invading America, pouring over our border by the millions.
Criminals, rapists, murderers, child predators, and God knows who else.
God knows who else? I mean, statistically, a couple of them at least have to be podcasters. I mean, murderers. But point taken. I think my pants just shit their pants. And if you're thinking that these are just some Central American no-goodniks, think again.
The countries we know they're coming from. Iran, number one state sponsor of terror. Their satellite country, Syria. Egypt, home of the Muslim Brotherhood. Afghanistan, home of al-Qaeda. 10,000 plus from Russia.
Record numbers of Chinese men of military age who have come across our border.
The number of military-age men that are showing up with military haircuts, clearly in shape. They're saying these guys are showing up with six-packs and military boots.
They're clearly, tight asses. I mean, there's not an ounce of fat on these motherfuckers. I am so hard right. I want to go down to that goddamn border and I want to get ass deep on these immigrants. I want to suck and until I want to cash me outside. How about that? Wow. So we got. The crowd loves my dirty Phil impression. We got criminals. We got terrorists. Is there anyone else down there we should be worried about?
Anybody ever hear of Hannibal Lecter? He was a nice fellow, but that's what's coming into our country right now.
Wouldn't cannibals amongst them be the solution to the problem? Or are they fasting until they get to America? Well, it's clear hyperbole, but there does seem to be bipartisan agreement now that the border is a problem. There were 300,000 crossings in December alone. That's an all-time high, and that is not sustainable. But Republicans turned down the chance to pass a strong border bill supported by the Border Patrol Union because of how confident they are that fear-mongering will be an effective election year strategy. It's all about branding.
I call it migrant crime. I really call it Biden migrant crime, but it's too long. So let's just call it migrant crime, and everyone's going to know it's because of Biden. We will call it from now on Biden migrant crime, okay? It's migrant crime. We'll call it, I got it, migrant. Let's call it migrant. Biden crime. Oh, that's good. That's smart. Migrant crime.
It's a portmanteau. I'm not completely sold on migrant. It really just sounds like a migrant who's open to crossing either border. It's migrant crime. Migrant. Look, there are some undocumented migrants who are committing crimes, some of them horrific. But isn't that true for every demographic, including natives? I feel pretty confident there's still a lot of opportunity out there for our American homegrown criminals.
Okay, just by the way, to interject real quick, all the fear-mongering is so dumb. There was a study that came out, I want to say about 5 years ago now or so. It was a Cato Institute study. So these are like right-wing people. These are libertarian types. And they found that more crime is committed by native-born Americans compared to not only documented immigrants, but also undocumented immigrants. So undocumented immigrants and documented immigrants both commit crime at a lower rate than native-born American citizens. So all of the like fear mongering over crime, it just statistically, it makes absolutely no sense. Now, if somebody does commit a crime and they are an undocumented immigrant, does it make sense to deport them? Sure. No problem with that at all. But let's not pretend like it's a bigger issue than it actually is. In the overwhelming majority of cases, the people who come in here are just looking for a better life and to get a decent job and to provide for their families. And oftentimes, they contribute socially and economically to this country massively. In fact, so many studies show that immigration is a positive economically for the country. Now, if people are worried about immigrant labor undercutting the wages of American workers, the answer is to legalize the immigrants so they can't undercut the wages. They can undercut it if they're undocumented. If they're documented, the same rules and laws apply to them as applies to American workers. Then there wouldn't be an ability to undercut it all anymore. So all of the arguments, it's just so dumb. Look, I understand that there's like a processing issue and an organization issue. But the answer to that is to flood the zone at the southern border with immigration judges and people who can adjudicate these cases quickly to determine who gets asylum, who doesn't get asylum, who's allowed in, who's not allowed in. It's just a funding issue and an organizational issue. But all of the fear-mongering about how they're MS-13 and they're gangsters and they're Hannibal Lecter and they're this and they're that, that is just factually untrue. And it's really annoying that because of the consistent fear-mongering among politicians and the media, this has now become the number one issue to Americans. Because apparently when you talk about something day in and day out on the news and act like it's the biggest problem in the world, people start to feel like it's the biggest problem in the world, even though it's not, even though it's definitely addressable. Again, all you have to do is send a tremendous number of immigration judges to the border and process these cases quickly. Have some new facilities down there. Maybe have some religious groups help people when they immediately cross the border so that they can get a hot meal and they can sleep in a bed. You know, I understand that they're overwhelming a lot of the infrastructure in these cities, but there are ways to address that short of let's become absolute psychopaths and just damn everybody to having no due process and kicking them out and sending them to places where they might end up dying, right? So anyway, great segment so far from Jon Stewart.
If it's enough of an issue that on Thursday, we had ourselves a good old-fashioned border off as both men saddled up and headed to the southern border. Trump headed to Eagle Pass and Biden headed to Brownsville. It was bitch-ass Cassidy versus the sundown kid. And Biden was fired up.
We're the United States of America.
Nailed it. He knew exactly where we are. Yes. He knew what country we were in. Bang, boom. This is the United States of America. I take back everything I said a month ago. Lay out your proposal, sir.
I understand my predecessor is in Eagle Pass today. So here's what I would say to Mr. Trump. Instead of playing politics with this issue, instead of telling members of Congress to block this legislation, join me, or I'll join you in telling the Congress to pass this bipartisan border security bill. We can do it together.
Ladies and gentlemen, the olive branch has been extended across the aisle in a show of genuine desire to solve this complex and vexing issue. Trump, your response.
Crooked Joe is the blood of countless innocent victims.
Look, I do have to say, though, Biden on one day will go out there and give a speech and say, Trump, let's work together in a bipartisan fashion to fix this border crisis. And then the next day, he's berating the media because you're not taking the threat of Trump seriously. The guy's a dictator. The guy's a tyrant. The guy's an authoritarian. The guy's an extremist. He could never hold power again. He's too out of bounds. And it's like you have to pick one. It's one or the other. You can't do the let me normalize you and work with you because you're a reasonable person that I can work with. You can't do that and then say you're also a dictator and nobody should work with you. That makes no sense. That makes no sense. And by the way, you see how Trump treats Biden and the Democrats, and yet you still like bend the knee, try to do the above the fray bipartisanship thing, and then immediately go back and forth to he's a dictator, he's beyond the pale, you guys need to call him out for how extreme he is. It's unbelievable.
That's a no. Seriously though, Crooked Joe. We still going with that?
Crooked Joe Biden, he's crooked. I took the name away from Hillary because she's no longer relevant, I guess.
Do you have to say everything that happens in your head out loud? It's been 8 years. You won. The woman's been through enough. Now you're going to take away her nickname now? What are you doing? But let me tell you something. Trump. I don't know why I got serious there. You can't scare the Democrats because the one thing that the Democrats have are principles. When it comes to immigration, the Democrats hold to our country's cherished ideals. The eternal promise etched at the feet of Lady Liberty that speaks to our better angels.
The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants.
These people are folks that we should be helping. America welcomes immigrants.
We want people to come here, despite where they came from or despite the circumstances that drove them to this country.
This is a place where the Statue of Liberty sits in the harbor, and we say, bring us your tide, those who are yearning to be free.
Unshakable. Bedrock. American values of compassion and empathy. And there is not a damn thing that you can do to change that.
Buses arriving in New York City from Texas, one after another, filled with migrants seeking asylum.
That's all you got? Nice try, Texas, but you heard the mayor. We're New York City. How dare you? No disrespect. But you are never going to change our values because you're afraid. So keep sending those busloads because we got plenty of room in our hearts and in this city.
We have no more room in the city.
He's roasting the Democrats here. This is all fair, man. This is fair. This is what they do.
What about the yearnings and the tiredness? And the tiredness of those who are doing the yearning?
110,000 migrants. We have to feed, clothe, house, educate the children, wash their laundry sheets. This issue will destroy New York City. Destroy New York City.
I mean, they're supposed to be doing our sheets. What's going on around here? What kind of topsy-turvy world are we living in over here? Yes, it turns out in the age-old battle between values and fear, values never had a chance.
Yep. Yep. I mean, this is what we said when we looked at the bill, the bipartisan bill that came out for immigration. Usually what happens with these negotiations is Democrats say, all right, look, we'll give you some more border security, but in response, you need to, look out for the dreamers, for example. Have a path to citizenship for people who've been here for a while and they're contributing to society, etc. And there's a trade-off. Hey, here's what we'll give you on immigration. You give us this on immigration. This time, there was no trade-off. This time, the Democrats took their political capital and said, Republicans, you need to vote for increased funding to Ukraine and Taiwan and Israel, and in response, we'll give you whatever you want on the border. Total crackdown, super, hardline stance, even revoke due process after a certain number of immigrants get across the border. So no more rules and regulations. Forget the Constitution. Due process, my ass cheeks. We don't need that. So they gave Republicans everything they wanted on the border and said, in return, you just have to vote for the Ukraine money and the Taiwan money. And to be fair, both parties want a tremendous amount of Israel money, and so they were both on board with that. But there was no trade-off within the issue of immigration. It was just all Republican ideas. And so, yeah, this is going to be the reaction when you do that. When you totally give in to the framing of the right and say, I just agree with you on the issue, well, then you don't believe in anything. And any of the noise you make, when you might be campaigning or trying to appeal to your own base about, we're a country of immigrants and all that stuff, you clearly don't mean any of that stuff or care about any of that stuff. And this is the reality. Now, by the way, it is fair to point out, if you're one of these Democratic mayors or governors or whatever, it is the federal government's responsibility. They are not picking up the slack that they need to pick up because the border is a federal issue. That's been determined in court. And so they really do need to pick up the slack and fund more services at the border and get more judges down there and all that stuff. So it is on them. But the amazing 180 that happens in a situation where some busloads of immigrants come in, again, it just exposes them that, what's that old saying that the left likes to use? You cut a liberal and a fascist bleeds or something like that. I mean, maybe that's a little hyperbolic for this instance, but certainly you cut a liberal Democrat and a moderate Republican is underneath, right? Like, you don't even need to cut them. There just are moderate Republicans. And he's calling that out very effectively here. So, hey, it turns out when you go into an election year and one of your main positions is my opponents are right on immigration, That might help the opponents. Why would they go with your cheap knockoff version when they got the original right there and you're saying the original is correct? Man, it's really embarrassing. There are many ways to have a interesting, accurate, intelligent perspective on the border, and all that's out the window now among the Democrats. And Stewart did a phenomenal job calling that out.
Hey, y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.